And welcome back to another podcast with Mr. Hagan. And on this podcast, we're going to continue talking about the jobs of the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve, I said two main jobs that I'm focusing on. The first one was regulating the banks as a lender of last resort. We talked about that on the previous podcast. On this podcast, we're going to talk about the Federal Reserve controlling the quantity of money, controlling the quantity of money. And I'm saying that this is the most important job of the Federal Reserve, and that could be debatable. It's the one that is most important probably to managing the aggregate demand curve and therefore managing the economy. So it's the one that's going to connect to the aggregate demand, aggregate supply model that we've been working on. So let's go ahead and talk about what this means. First of all, what is the quantity of money? Well, the quantity of money means the money supply, the amount of M1, or if we're doing M2, the amount of M2 money that exists out there for people to buy and for people to go out and buy and sell stuff. So I'm going to think more in terms, when I say money supply, I'm thinking more in terms of the M2 money supply, which means money in cash in your pocket, a checking account, savings account, certificates of deposit, money markets, things like this are all part of the amount of money that you have available to go out and exchange goods and services. So that's what I'm calling the money supply. How much of that is out there? If we added together all the checking accounts, all the cash, all the savings accounts, if we added all that stuff together, what's our number? That's the money supply. Okay, that's the money supply. And managing the money supply, controlling the money supply, is what is called monetary policy. So the Federal Reserve, one of their big jobs is to engage in monetary policy. They're going to manage or control the quantity of money that exists in the country. And this is going to be really important to our model in a little bit. This is done through the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee, the FOMC, which is the arm of the Federal Reserve that is responsible for monetary policy. So these guys are in charge of monetary policy. The FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee. Okay, so let's go take a look at that. The Federal Open Market Committee. The Federal Open Market Committee is made up of 12 members in the Federal Reserve Bank. There are 12 members that make up the Federal Open Market Committee, the FOMC. 7 of them come from the Board of Governors. We talked about that before on a previous podcast. The 7 members of the Board of Governors, which is going to include the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And then there's going to be, it's also going to include 5 of the 12 regional bank presidents. So remember, you had those 12 regional banks, and each of one of those regional banks has a president. 5 of those 12 are going to be part of the FOMC. And actually, the New York president, he's always going to be part of the FOMC. So it's really the other 4 seats on the FOMC are going to be rotated through the other 11 regional bank presidents. So 11 regional bank presidents are going to rotate through these 4 positions. The New York Fed president will always sit on the FOMC. Add in the Board of Governors, and you got the 12 members of the Federal Open Market Committee. And these are the guys that are in charge of managing the money supply. And so here's how they're going to do it. They're going to increase or decrease the money supply by adding or subtracting money from the economy. Well, okay, that seems pretty obvious, but how exactly do they do this? This is going to be done through what is called open market operations. This is going to be done through what is called open market operations, which is the buying and selling of United States government bonds. The buying and selling of United States government bonds. So we're going to talk on a future podcast exactly how this works, this buying and selling of the bonds. And before we do that, we got to talk about exactly what a bond is, and we will do all that on some future podcasts. All right, this has been Mr. Hagan. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you on the next podcast.